I'm Realtor Deb Tomorrow, and this is At Home in Bloomington, brought to you by Karen Rassel, Ruoff Home Mortgage. We profile the people, places, and resources that make Bloomington, Bloomington, and help you live your best life. At Home in Bloomington. Hey, everybody. Welcome to At Home in Bloomington. I am your host, Realtor Deb Tomorrow, joined as always by the lovely Miss Karen Rassel, best M lender in the state of Indiana. Woo woo! So I was listening to something, a little podcast-ish kind of thing, the other day, actually, in preparation for this show. And at the beginning of the show, there was like an intro, and they were announcing like the date that the show was recorded on, which I thought we should probably do that. Sometimes we allude to it. We do. But we don't always. We don't say because today because we want the show to be evergreen. Like, we want you to be able to listen to it 2 years from now. And that's my fancy word, podcasting word, evergreen. It sounds like I know what I'm doing. I really don't. But we want you to listen to the show 2 years from now and it still have a lot of relevant and relevant. There's and I mean that, information. So, but we are recording this on October 1st, which is my father's 78th birthday. So happy birthday, Dad. Happy birthday. And he's not listening because he doesn't know how to listen to podcasts, but it is his birthday and it is hotter than Hades.
But one day he can learn how to listen to podcasts, and then he's going to say, "Oh my gosh,
right?
Debbie recorded a podcast." My
Deb's
birthday.
With an S. That's what I'm called.
Okay, all right.
There's nicknames. That's
I love
Deb's
it.
With an S. Anyways, okay. So we were recording this on October 1st, and we're all miserably hot. So there you go.
Super hot.
And we keep saying in 2 days we're going to be miserably cold. So.
I'm also looking forward to that too.
Right.
Because that's bonfire weather. We've been waiting to, not bonfire, we were waiting to have a fire.
I have a pile.
Weeks.
I have a pile out at my house that is, I think it's 12 feet tall.
Oh, we totally should
bonfire.
do it. We're going to do it this
Yeah,
weekend.
Jack probably needs to come over because
Saturday.
it's good and dry because it's been there a while too. And we're like, okay, we need to get that going. Okay, but we have a guest today. So let's talk about our guest. You have no idea who she is, as usual. She is, I'm going to give you some hints and you're never going to get it.
Okay.
Because I don't think you know her.
This is no different from any other show, but go ahead.
You did get one a couple weeks ago.
I did do, okay,
which
that's
was
true.
A really exciting moment when she guessed.
Okay.
She is a rock star of sorts.
Everyone's
I know she's going to roll her eyes, but right? But no, because it was on the internet. Do you remember that?
It was
on the internet that you were called a rock star.
Oh, for goodness sake.
But not traditionally speaking.
Okay.
I don't know if she plays an instrument or not, but that's not really what this is about. But I have to tell you, so when we walked in, I said, look at all these pages of research I have.
Yes.
Which is like insane because like usually I have about one page of notes.
Yes.
And I don't know how today's show is going to go, honestly, because I have many questions and there's so much going on. I feel like what she does is like there's a wheel, right? Mm-hmm. And what she does, there's like the core of the wheel, but then there's all these spokes that are sort of related.
All roads lead back to our guest.
And support and emanate and inspire the center.
That's what rock stars do.
There was a lot. So I really had to kind of work to sort of boil some things down. And this may be, if you ever listen to Dax Shepard's podcast, which is really good. I can't remember. Armchair Expert is what it's called.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
No? You don't like Dax Shepard?
No, not really.
Oh, I like him.
Not a fan.
But his podcasts are like 2 hours long.
That would be why. I think that's why, because he's always a repeat guest on Ellen, and he needs to shut it down sometimes.
Okay.
Sorry.
You are allowed to have opinions.
I am.
And feelings. So there you go. Okay, here's some word clues.
Okay, word clues.
Okay, joint.
Oh, goodness.
Thank you. Thanks a
lot. Biscuit.
Okay.
Here's one I know from crossword puzzle days when I used to do a lot of crossword puzzles. OG.
Okay.
I'm probably mispronouncing that. Do you know that word?
It's like OG.
OGEE. Not like OG, like the OG, like the original. Not hipster. OG. OGEE.
Like G, your hair smells terrific shampoo. From
OG, your hair smells terrific.
No,
okay. She has no clue. And some of these I know, words I know. Here's another hint. Because I have, for many years on and off in my life, I've lived without cable, and this is before Hulu and Netflix and all of that. So I spent a lot of time watching Saturday morning PBS shows.
Okay.
So that's where I've learned some of these words too. Yeah? No?
No.
Rabbit?
No.
No.
No. But it is the first of the month, and there was a professor at IU that once said on the very first day of the month, the first words out of your mouth before you even put your feet on the ground, you're supposed to say rabbit, rabbit.
That's spelled differently.
Okay.
Okay, see?
See, there you go. Is that for
right.
good luck?
I don't know what the hell
Yes.
it's for, but that's what he told us to
Interesting.
do. Is
Okay.
that what it is? Okay, yeah.
Here's
no
one.
bad juju.
Here's one that I have no idea what it is, but I found it in something. So, lamb's tongue. What the hell?
No, I don't know what these are.
No?
What is that
Style?
game show from the, what do you call it? The 70s. It's like Password, or the password is.
Yeah.
This is what I feel like it is, and I'm doing poorly.
Love Password.
I do too.
Jimmy Fallon does Password. We're never going to get to the show. We're
Okay,
like 5 minutes
so
in
I don't
already.
know who-
Okay.
I don't know
So I basically opened up a glossary and then was picking words that I thought I knew how to spell. Mullion? No. What about this one?
Okay.
This one I feel like is the dead giveaway. Mortise and tenon.
No.
No, you don't know what that is?
That is that a music?
No.
I don't know. Okay, this is
It's like
driving me
Milli
nuts.
Vanilli, Mortise and tenon. No.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay.
All right.
Well, here we go. Our guest today is rock star, world famous. I'm not going to like make you feel uncomfortable the whole time. That's it. I'm done. She was introduced at the national, oh gosh, I don't know. I wrote it down, but I can't find my notes now. But it was a fine woodworking convention that you just did in 2019. And they said you were a rock star of the woodworking world.
Did they?
They did.
I must have blocked that out
Yeah,
of my mind.
well, I'm going to remind you often. So there you go. More than 30 years of experience as a professional furniture maker and cabinet maker with a story behind it that I think is just really, really interesting. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm actually super excited.
Thank you for inviting me.
I know you're terrified now because
No,
Karen and I have
I'm
been
not.
sitting here.
I know you from another
I know.
world.
So
Okay, but you haven't said her name yet.
I did. I said it was Nancy Hiller.
No, you didn't.
No,
I
you
didn't?
didn't.
Oh my
No,
word.
okay.
That's fine.
Jeez. I swear I started.
Better
Okay.
that way.
Nancy Hiller.
Okay.
And her website is nrhillerdesign.com.
Okay.
And she is a cabinet maker and a furniture maker. And how do you define yourself? Renaissance rock star.
Good heavens, no. Furniture maker, well, designer maker, and writer.
Okay. And that's where I thought it got really interesting because, you know, the furniture maker part of it, that's interesting to me. And I want to talk a little bit about how you fell into that or maybe you purposely went in that direction. But then there's this sort of phase of writer that's been going on for a good 10 or 12 years, at least published with multiple books. And they're interesting stories, but then they're also tied back to furniture and it's just fascinating. So we're going to get into like, how can you write an entire book about who's your cabinet? But you did. And I just think that's really, really interesting. So anyways, can you tell us your story of how you got into furniture making?
Part of one critical element, I think, is that my mother was always the hands-on person in my parents' marriage. And so she was always building things and remodeling our house and changing faucets. So even though my sister and I didn't grow up learning to use tools from her or anyone else, we had her example, and that's very important, I think.
So you didn't have a sort of that typical, the man fixes
Right.
things.
No.
So that was always blurred for you. And that,
Right.
Good. Cool.
Right. And so I was raised pretty much, I was good at school, mainly because I had no interest in being popular and didn't really know the definition of fun. And I'm not sure I still do, but that's
We can help
okay.
with that.
And so I just studied. And so I did well in high school and got a grant and scholarship to go to university. This was living in England because my mother and father split up when I was 11 and she took us to England to live. And I started college over there and I loved it academically, but what I really didn't like is you had to specialize really early. So at high school, I had specialized in dead languages because I feel most comfortable with dead languages, so Latin and Greek. And then I applied to study Hebrew and Aramaic at Cambridge. And so I went there and started that, and the studies were great. I loved that part of it. But it turned out that for most of my fellow undergraduates, Cambridge was like party central.
Really?
And I was shocked. And I just thought, what am I ever going to do with this anyway? And
teach.
So I dropped out. Yeah, I didn't want to teach, or I didn't think I did.
Yeah.
So I just dropped out because I just felt alienated by the atmosphere and the culture, and this sense that, oh, you're a student at Cambridge, you're smart. You know, the specialness really grated on me. And so I dropped out and went back to my temp job in London at the Automobile Association, like the AAA here, but there it's just 2 A's because it's not America. And then my boyfriend and I had a chance to move to the countryside where my mother and stepfather lived in a little town. And there was a little building, a little cottage added on to the building where they lived because the building had been an old school. And so the cottage was where the schoolmaster would have lived originally. So we moved there and I got a job working at a metal casting factory because I needed a job, and that was a job. And I started putting stuff together for us because we didn't really have any furniture. And I didn't know how to cut a straight line or use any tools, but, you know, using a hammer and nails, it seems pretty obvious. So my stepfather was constantly berating me and telling me I was literally useless, and we did not have a good relationship at the best of times. So one day when he added, you should take a carpentry course, I rode my bike down to the nearest vocational college to check out carpentry courses because I wanted to spite him. So
spite is a good motivator, I discovered.
It was in this case. And so the long story short is I ended up doing a course, a 9-month course in the City and Guilds of London furniture making program. And that provided me with a good foundation in all those words that you were mentioning earlier. Joinery, finishing.
Lamb's tongue.
And so after that, I had this fantasy of starting my own business, but I was 21 and I was clueless about business. And I thought, I'll just hang out the metaphorical shingle and people will come bring me orders.
Right.
And what happened is that I put an ad in a paper, the local paper, which we had back then, for a workshop that would have a living place with it. And it's hilarious in retrospect because I couldn't really have afforded to pay rent.
Yeah.
But the person who answered the ad happened to be starting a kitchen cabinet business. He was actually an art school graduate, and he had decided that a good way to make a living would be to run a kitchen cabinet company and kitchen design company. This was in 1980, and it was really the beginning of this industry's like major upturn. And on the pretext of me renting his shop and living in his old house, which was lovely and run down, he basically hired me. That's what happened. Okay. So that was my first job.
And did you find when you went...
my first woodworking job. I had been working since I was 15.
When you went through the 9-month training program, were there a lot of women or no women?
No, there were no other women. It was just me, and I stood out because also I was American.
Yeah.
So this was a time when in England there was still a thriving factory system. And so this was a publicly subsidized program of training. And the idea was some people who graduated would run their own business. Some would go to work for other private industry. And then a lot of the people were they were there on whatever it's called, day release. So their factory was paying for them to go and study there because even though they were not going to be building stuff with hand-cut dovetail joints, having that foundation for factory work was considered valuable at the time. Now, since then, a lot of the stuff that was built in British factories has stopped being built in British factories, many of which no longer exist.
I can imagine that you've seen quite a few changes in production and how things are produced. And one of the things that was interesting to me, I'm going to kind of skip around here, but that you're not, I don't know, Karen, did you ever watch PBS on Saturday mornings?
No.
You got like Norm with This Old House and the New Yankee Workshop, and then there was Roy Underhill. And he's a gentleman who does all this woodworking, but with the traditional non-electric tools. And that's not you. You will use whatever tools have been created, but there's still it's an interesting mix of using modern techniques, but still respecting the old styles, the dovetail joints and things like that. Yeah.
Right.
And one of the things I had heard you say on some of my research was that, like even the newest and greatest fasteners and drawer slides and things like that, or things that you would use to kind of make these older styles more aesthetically pleasing.
Or more a case of making them, if I'm working in, for example, a kitchen of a 1915 house, and the clients decide they want the kitchen to look just like the original cabinets that they have from the original kitchen, but sometimes I'll offer them a variety of ways of having their drawers made, but often people will decide that they don't want to have the drawers slide on wooden runners as old cabinets did, because what happens is you can only pull out the drawer halfway before it starts to sag. And so frequently I will end up using contemporary, high quality, full extension slides for drawers that look like they've been there 100 years old.
Which I think is just really interesting. So you do a lot of kitchens and built-ins and furniture, so kind of a wide range. And I'm assuming you're here in Bloomington, but you've probably got clients all over?
Well, the majority of my clients are in Bloomington, and that's partly because I've never had a chunk of capital that was sufficient to do major shows or have inventory of materials or finished products. So I've always worked as a custom designer maker. So that means I seek commissions for particular pieces of work for particular people and particular houses. And fortunately for me, I love the particularity of it, and I love the people and the context. So because of that, the majority of my work has been local, but over the years, thanks to the internet primarily, I have had people find me through my website or some other means and contact me to do a kitchen or a piece of furniture in Chicago or New York or various places on the East Coast, mostly Washington, D.C.
So is your love, you focus on arts and crafts furniture, am I right in saying that?
That is a specialty of mine, my interest, especially English arts and crafts furniture, and that's primarily because I love history and I love the ideals and values that went into the creation of what became the arts and crafts movement.
And so Bloomington's a good place for that?
Not necessarily. No. I mean, here's how I've developed my sort of body of work in the arts and crafts style. When I first started out, it was very fashionable. Anything arts and crafts in the late 1980s in this part of the country and around the country was fashionable pretty much. I don't care what's fashionable, but that happened to be, a good time to do work in that style. But then, over the years, whenever there was a slowdown in my business, I would make a spec piece and then try to sell it, get it published, whatever. And so the first one that I did was in 2002 when I built a hall stand in a sort of modified style based on a really fabulous arts and crafts example, an original one from England from the turn of the 20th century. And then, so this was just a spec piece. I had no buyer for it. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to propose it as an article idea to Fine Woodworking magazine, because I would die of happiness if I ever got anything published there. And I had proposed a couple of other project ideas to them, but this was the first one they said yes to. And so that was the first thing I got published there. But then over the years, anytime I would have a slowdown in work, I would build another spec piece, which is a risk. It's a total gamble because you don't have any income for it and you're spending your own money on the materials.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's one thing you can do productively and constructively during economic downturns is work on trying to get business. And it has proved to be one of the ways in which I can direct the course of my career somewhat, which has been a blessing.
I would imagine that there are plenty of woodworkers out there who are hobbyists and very good at what they do and think you're living the dream.
Yes, indeed.
And you would probably say, well, it's not always a dream, as I understand
dreams
it.
are often nightmares, or if not nightmares, unsettling.
Yeah.
And so, it's a much more risky way of making a living than many. And I think a lot of people read books such as Shop Class as Soulcraft by Matthew Crawford, and they think, oh, okay, so now there are all these arguments for going into the trades, and it's more economically secure and better paid than many service or white-collar jobs. Furniture making, not so much, because furniture, well-made, high-quality, beautifully designed furniture tends still to be pretty much a luxury item. Or if not a luxury item, I mean, because I work for decidedly middle-class people, and that's what I want. I don't want to be building luxury items.
Yeah.
But my point is, you don't have to have this furniture or these kitchens.
Right. To survive.
Exactly. Whereas the real basis for the argument about getting jobs in the trades is really more in fixing things, diagnosing problems and fixing things. There will always be a need for that. Sure. And at least at this point in history, that kind of work in many areas simply cannot be robotized or outsourced.
Right.
Whereas my work could be.
Yeah.
Not the design, not the personal service, but
a robot could produce a chair for us to put our butts in. Yeah. Well, I loved that one of the things you do, just real quick before we go to break, is that you do work with some of these websites and I guess the Fine Woodworking magazine, and you've provided checklists and sort of tips for people who maybe do reality checks for people who do want to get into the business. I read through some of that because it was very reminiscent of what I do in my business. And, we have a landscape business, and it's, you're truly running a business, and there are a lot of things, you're talking about, got to pay my Social Security, and, I got to pay my health insurance. That's all. I was like, yes, yes, yes. And I think that that's important for people to understand, and for people, if they want it, we want artisans to be successful, but they've got to understand that part of the business. And so I know I appreciate that aspect of it too. When we come back from break, I want to talk about your writing and some of the books and things that you've written, and point people in those directions. And maybe we'll touch a little bit on historic preservation, since that's been a bit of a topic in the news this morning in the paper. So, So stick around. You are at home in Bloomington.
Hi, this is Karen Rastel with Ruoff Home Mortgage. Did you know we are on the cutting edge of technology when it comes to applying for a mortgage? Loan Butler was created with you in mind. It's a fast, convenient, and secure way to apply online for a mortgage loan. It reduces the amount of paperwork and time for you. Save a tree and contact me today at 812-606-7653 for more details. Ruoff Home Mortgage is an Indiana corporation licensed by the Indiana Department of Financial Institutions. This is not an offer for extension of credit or a commitment to lend. All loans must satisfy company underwriting guidelines. Equal housing lender. NMLS number 141868.
Hi, everyone. I'm back with another Real Estate Realist, practical advice on buying and selling real estate based on my experience closing over 800 home sales. Now, most of us like to watch HGTV and watch the amazing home renovation transformations. But what's the process like in real life? We all know it takes a lot longer than an hour. But what else? On my Real Estate Today podcast, we spoke with Lauren Wood from Lauren Wood Builders to learn about the steps in the renovation process. Here are his 4 phases. Number 1, establish the scope. What are you trying to accomplish? Whether you're planning a renovation, addition, or new construction, setting parameters for the project and getting a realistic idea of timeline, complexity, and budget is an important first step. Number 2, design and costing the project. For some, this means polishing an existing plan. Others start only with a vision and may need an architect to help turn that vision into a set of construction drawings. Once the design is in place, a project manager will work with suppliers and subcontractors to arrive at an estimate and advise you on the best choices for your project from a design, cost, and efficiency standpoint. Number 3, build out. This is when things get exciting and messy. Watch your rough ideas and 2-dimensional drawings become your dream house, your new kitchen, your master bedroom suite. Your builder should be communicating with you heavily through this phase. And number 4, move in. Seems easy enough, right? But just like on TV, having an expert guiding you along the way will make the process easier. For more information on the home renovation process, listen to my Real Estate Today podcast, show number 75. You can find it on iTunes, YouTube, and my website, www.athomeinbloomington.com.
My name is Brittany, and Deb Tomorrow is my realtor. She helped me buy my first home. I enjoyed working with Deb because she was patient, thorough, and made the experience fun. Deb should be your realtor too. And now, back to the show.
Hello, welcome back to At Home in Bloomington. We will continue with our interview with Nancy Hiller here in just a second, but I wanted to throw back to one of our previous episodes. So I thought, in honor of women doing non-traditional things, I had a good episode to throw back to. That was episode 24, which is where we talked with our friend Julie Ramey, who is the, I'm going to get this wrong, but Troop Master of BSA Troop 1148 for girls, which was formerly Boy Scouts, and now they've, got troops and for girls. And I've had so much fun following all their adventures. You follow them on Facebook?
I do follow
They're
them.
so cute. For the past, 6 or 7 months, they've been out camping in the rain, in the snow. These girls
Making memories.
Badasses.
Learning, yes.
Yeah, and they're, and they're always showing like they're with sailing and they're, I don't know. It's amazing. I remember doing that show about your short-lived experience being a scoutmaster.
We're not scout. I was the den leader.
Den leader. There you go. I don't know.
4 years, all
Right.
through my sons. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And-
it's short-lived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you did it.
Good. Yes. We need more people like Julie and
Yes.
and the team of
Yes.
ladies that lead that
Yes.
group.
So what I want to say is rock on with your bad selves, girls. Keep on it. So let's get back to Nancy because she's got a bunch of books that I want to talk about because I think they're really interesting. I don't know which book do you want to start with?
Well, I'm just finishing up. Well, I have recently submitted the manuscript for the next book, which is a book about kitchens. An unconventional book about kitchens, as you might expect if you
Not shocked,
familiar
yeah.
with any of my work.
Yeah.
So this one I was asked to write by the publishers at Lost Art Press, which is a book publishing company based in Covington, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And they specialize in books related to woodworking and design. And the publisher editor is Christopher Schwartz, who was a longtime editor, like top senior editor at Popular Woodworking magazine.
But before that, you've done several books on kitchens, right? I mean, the Hoosier Cabinet?
The Hoosier Cabinet book grew out of, I was originally interested in writing a book on period kitchens and had a contract with the Taunton Press, which is the publisher of Fine Home Building and Fine Woodworking, to do a book on kitchens. And then the recession came and the contract went away. The whole thing fell apart. But in the meantime, Lee Sandweiss, who is a client and dear friend of mine here in Bloomington, she was not my friend at the time, though. I was working on her kitchen. My employee at the time, Daniel O'Grady, and I were redoing the kitchen of Lee and Eric Sandweiss. And Lee then was the sponsoring editor for the trade books division at the IU Press.
Okay.
And she asked if I would write a book on Hoosier cabinets.
Okay.
And so that's how I came to write a book on Hoosier cabinets. But I told her I would do it as long as I could write it from a much broader historical and social perspective, because there was already a very good book by Philip Kennedy about Hoosier cabinets that focused on different varieties and of Hoosier cabinet and the various accoutrements that made up the different models and stuff. And frankly, I am so not interested in any of that.
Yeah.
I thought
you want the story behind the story.
Yeah, I'm much more interested in culture and history, and that is partly an outgrowth of my education from when I went back to school at IU here in Bloomington in the Religious Studies Department. So that
with aspirations to do what?
Well, first the goal was simply to keep my brain alive, as I had been a full-time cabinet maker and furniture
inhaling
maker
a lot of
for
fumes.
many years. Yeah. And the secondary goal was to learn how to argue with people with whom I disagreed. I mean, learn how to argue formally. That means learning about the substance of whatever topic I was arguing about, whether it be politics or development in Bloomington. And second, learn the rules of logic, basically, and clear thinking beyond what I already had learned at high school in England. But then I thought maybe this would be an opportunity to escape from woodworking, which may sound odd to many people, but this was before I had my own business, and I just really felt like it was very repetitive, which it is, and I was ready for something different. So after finishing my bachelor's degree, I thought maybe I could apply to a doctoral program and go on to teach at the university level. So I started grad school and earned a master's, but decided against. That was enough to teach me enough about what it means to be a professional academic, that there were aspects to it that had nothing to do with teaching, and there is so much of that. It's sort of analogous to furniture making. There's all this other stuff that you didn't realize was part of the job. And I realized, I don't want to be a professor after all. So I just needed a job, and I ended up going back to what I knew. And that was when I started my business in 1995.
And when did you publish your first book?
The first book was Lee. I was working for Lee and Eric Sandweiss in 2005, and the book, which is called The Hoosier Cabinet and Kitchen History, was published in 2009 by the Indiana University Press.
Okay. So that book is out there. You've also got a book called A Home of Her Own.
That was the second one I wrote, and that was one I had wanted to write for many years, since I first had bought my house on Rogers Street, my 1925 bungalow. And I realized, I wasn't married, I was divorced, and I realized as I started working on the house and lived there, mostly alone. I rented out a couple of rooms at various times to a single lodger at a time, but I realized that the house was becoming analogous to a partner for me. It was providing a lot of the sort of, comfort and satisfaction.
Security, and stability.
Yeah, and also just the physical presence of a house, the shelter it provides. I realized that I was coming to rely on it at some level of my being in many of the ways one relies on and appreciates a partner, a human partner. And I thought that was interesting, and in discussing it with some women friends of mine who were in similar situations, I found that I was far from alone in this, and I really wanted to write a book about it. And so what happened was, by the time the Hoosier Cabinet book was published, my business had been pretty much gutted by the recession at that time, starting in 2008. And I had moved in with the man who is now my husband, Mark Longacre, and I was cobbling together any work I could in my workshop, writing anything that I could do to bring in money. And so that enforced period of relatively slow work enabled me it gave me the opportunity to write that book that I had wanted to write for many years. And that was a wonderfully gratifying project. And Kendall Reeves partnered with me on that and did the photography, which is beautiful.
And the gist of that book is just showing homes and telling the stories of the homes.
It's not just that, because it really goes back to the founding motivation. That is, every house in that book is, or was at the time, the stories are the stories of women who found a kind of partner in their home while they lived and worked on it. And for the book, because it was going to be such a visual project, I selected I know lots more women who fall into this wonderful category, but I wanted the book to be marketable purely on visual grounds, not just, you could buy it and
coffee table book kind of thing,
pictures and not read a single word, and that would be fine with me and Kendall. Yeah. But so I was selecting for design and stuff as well, not just compelling stories.
And are those homes in the Midwest, or are they?
Most are in the Midwest. Most are in Bloomington. There's one in Indianapolis. There are a couple in Chicago, and there was one in Oakland, which belonged to a wonderful serial home restorer, Jane Powell, who has since died.
Okay. So that sounds like an interesting book to give to my single women clients. Yeah. To inspire them. One of the things I've noticed in some of the research I was doing was this sort of thread, and I think we'll talk a little bit about historic preservation, but this continuity of being connected with the past. And what struck me about that is, and I don't know if you know this, my house was built in 1927, and way back, gosh, I've been in it for over 13 years. But Carol Krause from the Herald Times is no longer with us, but she had written a story about the house. And we just kind of told her our story and how we felt about the house. And then she put it all together as she was able to do beautifully. And she entitled it something, I can't remember the exact title, but it had to do with continuity. That was a word that she used. And because I would say, the people who built our house, I go down once a year and visit them in the cemetery, tell them everything's all good. The woman, her name was Laura, and she and I share a birthday. So when I found that out, I was standing in the Monroe County History Center and just stumbled upon their marriage record, looking at something, and started sobbing. And her husband died in front of the fireplace of tuberculosis, and but just for some reason, I feel more connected and I feel more grounded to have that history behind me and to be kind of enveloped in that history. So I found that I think that was maybe a little bit of a running theme in some of your work as well, that connection with the past.
And it's a responsibility to previous generations, as I see it. It is, as you said, a source of grounding. It's a reminder and a corrective to some of what fantasies that we may have today about what is really necessary. Like, do you really need a Keurig coffee maker? Maybe not. Yeah. And so I think it's absolutely essential to have a firm grounding in history.
So historic preservation, I just want to touch on it because you did write a book, or you edited a book called Historic Preservation in Indiana, Essays from the Field. I know some of my friends, Steve Wyatt and Don Granboys and Henry Glassy, who I can't even look at because I'm always so in awe of him. I don't know, he intimidates the crap out of me. But anyways, they wrote essays, and then you kind of put them together. And Gail Cook from the Cook family, she wrote one on the business of historic preservation, which I think is really important, that it can make sense. This sense of, just building new is cheaper is not necessarily the case. So there's that too. And I don't want to get into, we don't really like to get into politics on this show necessarily, but there was an article in the paper this morning of some historic preservation issues that are coming up. So I think it's going to become a hot topic here in Bloomington in 2019 when we're recording this. But what's your take on historic preservation? That's kind of a broad question, but
well, I have many takes on it, but I think one of the most important things, other than what we already touched on, which is continuity and the fact that old things and paying attention to and learning about old things and history can be an important corrective to much of what we think about the world today. I think one of the most important things is that it's simply wasteful to throw old things away, and that includes old buildings. And there are still people today. I mean, I'm just going to be sloppy here because we have limited time. Yeah. The whole green movement there's so much waste connected with so-called sustainable and green, even LEED certified building. The truest form of saving is historic preservation and saving forest, saving land, topsoil. And there are plenty of studies that have been done about the cradle to grave carbon footprint of all kinds of things, whether it be like a new electric vehicle versus keeping an old truck going. I mean, but when you take into account all of the different dimensions that exist to any given thing, whether it be an old wooden window or a lot of people just look at energy saving now without looking at what about all the energy that had to be put into the mining and the transportation of the raw materials and then the smelting or whatever and fabrication, and all the people who made that new LEED certified product drove to work every day and drove home, and then that thing was transported to you wherever. And historic preservation is at least one way. In many cases, not every building is necessarily a great candidate, but in general, I think that historic preservation is one of the best ways to live greener.
I absolutely agree. And basically what we're saying is save those old windows. Sometimes I feel like I need to put my house has all its original windows and they're gorgeous, and I just would die if anybody ever took those windows out. Just, you can buy some really good storm windows and it's fine. Trust me, you're fine. I'm comfortable. My utility bills are not crazy.
Well, and the other thing about that is a lot of people will say old windows have lead on them from lead paint. Yeah, but the other answer I have to that is we are constantly on the forefront of inventing new chemicals, the dangers of which have yet to be discovered. All kinds of things.
I found this really cool article that we'll link when we do some show promotions. It's called Why Do Old Places Matter? It was put out by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. It was written by Thompson Mays, and it goes through really clearly about continuity and memory and individual identity and civic identity. And it's and I just wanted to kind of point that out if anybody's looking to get inspired. Why do old places matter? National Trust for Historic Preservation. There's some really good information there. Before we go, because I knew that there was no way I was going to get to all of my notes for today's show, but I want to make sure that people know how to get in touch with you. I was, I guess, a little relieved to hear that you do work with sort of middle class people, because I think when we think custom, we think high end, and most of us are like, yeah, I could probably never afford that. And certainly it's not, not like going to Target and buying a chair or whatever, but building a family treasure that will last for a long time. So just in a nutshell, kind of what's your process if people are interested in whether it's having you design a kitchen and do the cabinetry, or whether it's just doing a chair or some furniture?
Well, usually I like to have a quick phone conversation with someone. Sometimes people will email me, but honestly, I usually turn that into a quick phone call because it's just more back and forth, immediate, in real time. And the first questions I will ask are, what's the nature of the project? Is it something I am capable of, or, that I'm good at, or can I refer you to someone who's better at that than I am? Second, we will talk about budget and timeline. Part of the thing about custom work is that because it's custom, you can customize how you build something. So within limits, that can affect the affordability. And I couldn't make a living if I didn't try to make my work affordable, especially when economic downturns happen. And so I'm not, I'm simply not in a position to not be working. And so I do what I can to work with people with whom I want to work. So my website you already gave the nrhillerdesign.com. Right. And there's a link in that to my email.
Okay.
And phone number.
Great. And so I just want to encourage everyone. There's also gorgeous pictures, and you've got Instagram that people can follow, right? That probably has gorgeous pictures on it as well.
Well, some are more gorgeous than others. There's a lot of work process. I don't use Instagram primarily to market my work. I think it's a wonderful way to connect with other woodworkers and people who make other things. And so it's as much about that as finished products.
So check that out. If people are interested in your books, is there one central source that they should go? Or I know because some are published by IU Press.
And then the others will be Lost Art Press, because my last book,
there's a bunch of them.
My website.
Okay. Yeah, one of them I did not get a chance to mention, but I wanted to just real quick was the Making Things Work, The Tales from the Cabinet Maker's Life. I love that title because I think there's sort of a double meaning that it's, making things, it's the work of making things as well as making things work. And I think we all, this whole crafting and what you do is much more than just crafting, but people are really interested in crafting and home improvement and remodeling because we all want to make things. There's just this satisfaction. I'm horrible about it. And I wanted to ask you about perfectionism, but I don't think we have time for that. So we'll have to have that conversation afterwards. And I also wanted to say that book got a review from Nick Offerman from Parks and Rec and many, many other things, because he's also a master carpenter. So I was like, ooh, look at that. Famous. There you go. So nrhillerdesign.com, check that out and check out the books too. I think there are some really interesting things, not just for woodworkers, but for all people. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
I appreciate
you for having me.
Had fun. All right. Thank you for listening, and we will be back with another episode. You are at home in Bloomington. Got a show idea? I'd love to hear it. And be sure to contact me for all your real estate needs and questions too. You can email me at deb@realrealestatetoday.com and follow me on Facebook at Deb Tomorrow Realtor. To contact Karen Rastel for all your mortgage needs, call 812-606-7653 or log on to ruoff.com and go to the Bloomington Center. Thanks to all the Bloomington people who make production of At Home in Bloomington possible. Special thanks to superstar producer Rachel G. Gregorio, digital guru Cynthia Hogan at Monster Digital Marketing for website design and hosting, and video genius Wes Lasher in the production house for engineering the show.